Today we have what every fleet manager cringes to hear, where their diesel trucks filled with gasoline. 40-gallon tank on this truck, and the gauge reads full. She's completely empty. So we obviously got to get the gas out and do some checking to see what kind of damage has been done. First thing I'm going to do is check see what any codes may have cropped up. But before I do that, before I turn the key on, I want to start draining this fuel out. I don't want to keep sending gas up to the truck. So this is our secondary fuel filter. This is the inlet from the tank. This is the outlet to the engine. So we're going to disconnect that and put a hose on it, and then drain all the fuel into these old def jugs over here. So I got about 40 gallons worth of def jugs up on the top of the wall there, just for this purpose. Keep 40 gallons on hand at all times, and I'll get that hooked up, and we can turn the key on, see what kind of codes we got, and start draining the tank. Alright, so let's hook up our fuel line. And this is just a quick release. You just squeeze in on the tabs and push them up. Just pop the line off. Put this line on, and this line's a little too big. I'm gonna clamp it so we don't have any leaks, hopefully. Put the other end to a jug. I'm going to turn the key on and see if we have any leaks. I got a junction here, that looks good. A junction up there looks good. So the frame rail mounted pump's pretty good. Key runs for the pump for 30 seconds, and that's a pretty good amount of fuel that came out of there. So it doesn't take long at all to empty one of these tanks out. You can use the key, or you can just use the computer to manually engage the pump, or you can straight wire the pump. However you want to do it. There's many options. One thing, my floor is not spotlessly clean, but there's no fluid on it. That way, when I pull a vehicle in, or if I do an oil change or something, I look under the car, if there's fluid on the ground, I've got a leak. If there's not, then we're good. So I brought this truck in last night. There's nothing on the floor, and this morning we got a nice little orange spot on the floor. You come in here and look, and the bottle's low. So suspect a radiator, and hard to see, but the corner of that radiator is leaking. So the next step is to write that down, because if we don't write it down now, I may forget about it. And in the grand scheme of things, if this thing needs a $10,000 fuel system, then another $800 ain't gonna hurt them. So let's see what we got for codes here. So our scan tool wants to do an update, which we don't want to do. We're trying to use it. Don't want to be updating while we're trying to use it. Let this thing ID the vehicle. And at some point in time we've worked on it before because it's got the session already created. Alright. So 13 F450 with a 7.3. We'll do a let's just do all the codes and see what we got in here. Our self-test. Alright, it looks like we got a P2291. Not worried about the rest of the stuff. The P2291 is ICP too low engine cranking, which we suspected because the driver put gas in it and drove it till it quit, and it's never a good thing, but we obviously lost fuel pressure. However, he didn't drive very far. So what we're going to do is we're going to get all the fuel out of it, put some fresh diesel in it, get diesel up to the point where I'm at on the upper filter, change the fuel filters, and then just start up and let it run. It can't hurt anything. If there's damage that's been done, it's been done. If not, sometimes you get lucky and they run fine forever. So we're not going to condemn the whole fuel system right away. I'll check back with you after I get some of this fuel out of the chassis. Alright, so I started this process about 9:20 and it is now 9:40. We've pumped 5, 10, 15, 20, about 22 gallons of fuel out. So we're in about a gallon a minute, which is pretty good. And that tank there, a little bit of a different fuel mix, fuel quality. I don't know if I'd run that in my car. The weed eater for sure, maybe the lawnmower, or maybe the neighbor's car, not my car. The rest of it's good to go. So let's see where we're at on the old gauge here. These gauges don't respond well to large amounts of fuel being added or removed quickly. So sometimes you gotta cycle the key. Like we're about, I don't know, 5/8 of a tank. I mean 3/8 of a tank. So I'll show you how I drain these things. I use the old laptop. Anytime I can use a laptop, I'm kind of lazy. It makes things easy. So I got a data logger, go to powertrain, fuel system. Then IDS will select whatever it thinks you want to look at. The best selection. Get rid of all that. It doesn't know what I want to look at. And then I'll go to lift pump. Lift pump. Where is the lift pump? There she is. Fuel pump command. So we'll click that, and we'll hit the old tick button, and it says it's off. So I'm going to come over here to our pound sign or hashtag, hit our little finger, and then the plus button, and that'll go to on. And then we start filling our jug again. So I can walk away. I don't have to keep babysitting the key for 30 seconds at a time. And in the meantime, I've cleaned out some more depth jugs because we're going to put 20 gallons of diesel back in it, so we don't have to worry about running it low while we're doing some testing and driving it down to the station. I can just fill it from right here. So, and you can see how quickly this thing's filling up. I mean, you can't walk away for too long. I'll usually bring it up to about that line right there. Give it a little room for expansion. put the caps on loose. And our OSHA approved jugs here. So she's almost where I need to shut her off. And shut her off, just come down to the negative sign. And we're off. As you can see right there, we turned off. And we stopped pumping, so I'll continue filling the rest of these jugs and get her right empty until she's pumping air. And I'll put some diesel in it, and I'll do the same thing until I get clean diesel coming into the jugs. Then I'll change the fuel filters, and we'll attempt to start this truck and see what happens. Now the trick is to fill this thing with diesel out of these jugs without getting it all over my shoes. So we'll see how this goes. So this is going to take a while, so I'll come back when I get it full. Halfway there. And now we're down to the last jug, which will put us about 18 or 19 gallons. Going to leave the cap off so this thing can vent a little easier. And I'm running into a new jug. Turn this fan down. Running into a new jug, so I'm just going to run it till I get some clean diesel up here. Then we'll change the fuel filters and then run it some more, just to get that little bit of saturated diesel out of the fuel filters out of there. How much fuel we put in there? 24.5.
Service 701, please.
more time, and then we'll change the fuel filters. And these are the fuel filters, Motorcraft, obviously. FD 4615. Pretty easy to change, which is good because I gotta lay on my back to change the bottom filter. So let me get set up for that and we'll change them out. Alright, so now we're under the truck, and this is the primary fuel filter and the fuel pump assembly. I hope you can see this. I think there's enough light. This is the water and fuel sensor, so we just want to disconnect it. Put the wire up out of the way. And this is the water drain valve. And then this is where you can put the socket to loosen this thing. Now this thing has a stop on it. It's pretty cheesy. This is all plastic. And you know, people get right after this thing and break these things all the time. So you have to be kind of careful with it. Even if you put a socket on here and it doesn't want to spin, you need to stop, put a strap wrench on it to help you, because you can break this plastic right out of here. So what I'm going to do, I got to get a pan, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to crack this loose, but not all the way, because if you loosen this up and let it drain, you could end up draining the tank if the conditions are right. So, but if you loosen this and turn it 5 complete turns, it opens a little valve and prevents fuel from draining anymore, and you can drain this, you don't make a mess, and then you can drop this down, change the filter. So let me get a pan. Alright, so we'll just crack this loose. We're not making a mess. Turning this thing. These are pretty beefy ratchet. Just makes it easier. So we got some extra wiring here that's in the way. It doesn't feel like this was lubricated when it was put together, back together. So there's one turn. There's 2 turns. That's getting pretty light. So that's 3, 4, and 5. Now I could just drop this right off here, but man, it makes a mess. I'm laying on my back. I really don't want to wear all this diesel fluid. So we'll just open that up, let it drain, and then we'll come back and change out the filter. Alright, we're getting to the last drips and drops here. So we're almost done draining. It'll be nice and no mess when we take this off here. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and shut this. Alright, I'll just pop this off. And there's our fuel filter. Still made a mess. Oh, my pants. That's not what I wanted to do. I'm gonna wear these the rest of the day. It smells like a diesel. Alright. I'll take the O-ring out of here. Just a pocket screwdriver. The stone shield's really in the way. Just PG-13 here. Never have a problem with these O-rings. Pop that off of there. Put the new one in. Roll it around. That's nice and even. Dump our fuel out of here. Make sure it's nice and clean inside, which it is. So we just flushed gasoline through it. And then the most important part is to lubricate the O-ring and threads. And that is the equivalent of WD-40. Let's put that up there. Spin it around. It gets tight. And when we tighten it, we just got to go nice and easy so we don't break our tab when we bottom out against it lines up the connector. So we should be getting close. That's it, as far as she goes. If I was at mid-swing with that ratchet, I could have easily broken that tab. It's kind of critical to have this thing tightened correctly, because if it sucks air, the engine will run okay, but man, she makes some noise. She'll hum and do all kinds of weird things. So let's go look at the upper secondary fuel filter. Alright, so we're back under the engine compartment, and this is our new fuel filter. I mean, it's pretty straightforward replacement. However, Ford managed to complicate things by making this a quick release filter housing that doesn't release very quickly. And it's an endless source of frustration for anybody trying to change it. I'm just going to stuff this under here to try to cut down on the amount of mess this makes. Just squeeze these tabs to release this supply line. It's got a lot of fur on it, and then this just rotates. I should put the cover on this. Believe it or not, it rotated out pretty easily. So I'll just get this out of the way. And then there's a little deal here that turns and clips into. So I'll put it back down in there. Hopefully this goes in as easy as the one came out. Not too bad, not great, not too bad. Just clip that in, and then we're not going to put the line to the tank on yet, or the engine on yet. Just going to pull a little more fuel through here, so we'll put that back on. Tighten it down. Now we'll cycle the key again, and then we'll see if we can start this thing. Really see the amount of air that gets introduced into the system by doing fuel filters. So this will help me bleed the system and just run some clean diesel. You see right there, we're bubble free almost. That would have been enough to prevent the engine from starting if we just jumped in and turned the key after doing fuel filters. Alright, so we're back to our ITIS. Got our fuel system back together on the engine, and we are going to monitor a few different PIDs to see if this thing will start. So we want to look at, obviously we want to look at our lift pump command. We want to look at RPM, low pressure fuel switch, fuel oil pressure actual versus commanded, and then we want to look at our volume control valve and our pressure control valve. And that's about it really, and then we'll kind of take a look at V-power just to see what it's doing. Alright, so our fuel pump is off and our fuel pressure switch is reading low, and our fuel oil pressure is zip. We don't have any. In anticipation of starting, she's going to want 4350 psi. Our pressure control valve is pretty much wide open. Our volume control valve's got 15% command on it, no RPM, and 12.42 volts. Now let's see if we can build a little bit of pressure off the pump. So I'm going to take the pressure control valve and I'm going to send it to maximum. I'm going to shut it as high as it'll go. Alright, we're bottomed out at 75. I'm going to take the volume control valve and I'm going to send it as low as it'll possibly go to make sure it's open and let fuel in. Then we're going to turn our pump on. So we're going to come up to the pump. We're going to turn the pump on. Our switch goes to not low, and we're trying to build a little bit of pressure here on our fuel oil pressure. We'll see what happens. It's trying to read, so we know we got some fuel in the rail now. So let's go back and reset all this stuff to 0. Find my cursor. Hit the little eraser button. Turn off our hashtag. Now we're ready to crank it. So we're going to watch this pressure right here versus our actual. Let's see what happens. And obviously, I mean, it started and runs, so matching pretty good. Doesn't run very well. It's running. Alright, our volume control valve is at 33%, pressure is at 24%, we're idling around 650, we're charging 13.8 volts, and pump is on, and low pressure fuel switch is reading not low, which is good. Runs about 70 pounds of fuel pressure on the low side. Alright, so also you want to check for leaks. And not many leaks, we didn't create any. So what am I looking for now? Basically, I'm gonna take my phone with me obviously because I'm gonna go drive this truck. But the biggest thing I'm looking for is, does it run smooth? Does it start to skip? Does our fuel pressure actual drop off compared to what the desired is? Are they, as long as they match and keep up with each other, then I mean it's okay. As long as the truck doesn't skip, I'm gonna go drive it and get all the air out of the rails, and then come back, and then I'm gonna look at the short-term fuel trim on all the injectors, or the IQA injection quantity adjustment for at idle. If one's really out of whack, then we've got some trash that went through the injector, and we're gonna have to take a few pieces off and look to see if there's any crud on the injectors. Excuse me. We're gonna have to look to see if there's any metal on the pressure sensors we were looking at for the PIDs. Like I said, the truck hasn't run long enough to really get any metal going on it, but after driving it we'll know for sure. And I'll show you what really happens with one of these. The biggest problem you run into, I just Just happen to have one of these pumps over here. So this is the crankshaft. And this is the word I'm looking for here. This is the follower. This pushes on the piston. So there's a piston in there and a piston in here. And there's nothing to keep this from rotating. I mean, this thing can sit in here and just go any way it wants. But really, you need it to be exactly like that on the crankshaft, which is sitting right in here. So if you don't have any lubrication because you put gas in it or depth fluid or whatever, this thing can stick in the bore a little bit and then turn. And if that's the case, there's a pretty good bit of spring pressure here, so it keeps it right flat against it. But if it sticks a little bit and turns, then you start running into problems. You can see, I mean, this thing can turn 90 degrees, and if that's rolling on it like that instead of like that, you start chewing up metal and sending it right to the injectors.